has anybody heard of xplat before? You got one, two? Okay, a couple, great. If you haven't learned about xplat or you don't know what it is, this is going to be a very high-level talk through kind of some of the things that you can do with xplat, some of the features, and hopefully it'll kind of inspire you to use the schematics in the future. So today we're going to be talking about catching uncatchable unicorns. We're not going to be using a net, although you might think that's probably the best thing to do. We're going to be using Angular. And as Angular developers, we know that Angular is a great framework. And unlike AngularJS, Angular is a framework that allows us to do both mobile and desktop. So we can develop with Angular to create not just web applications, and Angular is really good at creating single-page web applications, but we can also create mobile applications, whether those are hybrid mobile applications using some of the different frameworks that are out there, like maybe NativeScript or Ionic. And we can also develop desktop applications using Electron. So most applications maybe kind of are your unicorn idea, if you will. Kind of start like this. So you're hanging out, and you and your buddy are like, we got this great idea. This is going to be amazing. It's going to provide immense value to our users. This is going to be revolutionary. And you start to build this thing, and it's like, okay, this is awesome. This is really good. And it's kind of a single targeted platform, right? Maybe you start with NativeScript, or maybe you start with Ionic, and you deploy to the iOS and app stores. But then things kind of change, and you're like, wow, people really love what we're doing. Maybe we should start making this for other platforms. And then slowly, your really beautiful application starts looking like this, where you're kind of tacking things on here and there, and it becomes very complicated and very complex. And so what xplat tries to do is it tries to reduce that complexity. And the last thing we want to do when we start building multi-platform applications is start to copy-paste things between repositories and between projects, right? We don't want to do that. So what do we do? How do we actually start to think about structuring our code and structuring our project in a way that is logical and also follows best practices? And so I'm going to propose that maybe one possible solution, and I don't think this is like the solution. I prefer it, and I've been using it for the last couple months on a project full time. But one solution that you might consider is xplat. You could call this crossplat, I guess. I've also heard it as that, but xplat is kind of the name of it. Jesse mentioned that he doesn't work for Cypress. I don't work for the company that developed xplat. It came out of a company called NStudio. You can check them out online, and they have their documentation for xplat up there as well. The thing that I really like about xplat, for me anyways, is that it's built on top of NX, right? So NX from the team at Narwhal is already this technology, if you will. It's really more of a tool set and a schematic that enables you to build multiple applications in a single mono repo, right? And you get a lot of abilities out of that. You get to leverage a lot of code sharing between your applications. So xplat truly is cross-platform. We're going to be using Angular. We're going to be deploying to the browser. We can also use Angular in NativeScript and Ionic to develop native mobile applications. And we can use Electron to build desktop applications. And we'll be using NestJS just because it works so well with Angular and TypeScript and everything, and leverages a lot of the same functionality, or actually not functionality, leverages a lot of the same feature set and implementation of Angular. And it's really easy to get started with Nest if you're an Angular developer. Okay, to get started, it's pretty easy, standard issue, right? npm install. So obviously you need to have the CLI installed. After you install the CLI, we need to install the Narwhal schematics, so that is the NX workspace. And then once you have that installed, you can run create NX workspace. And then you give it a name. The name is going to be whatever your workspace name is going to be. So whatever your kind of project name is, or maybe your company name or something like that. And then once you're in there, you're good to go. From there, all you have at this point is an empty NX workspace. But what we want to do is we now want to leverage xplat and add that into our workspace. So with the CLI, we can use the new ng-add. Right? So we run ng-add, and we're going to add in the xplat schematics. Now you might be thinking here, hold on, so wait, what's this prefix thing? And why am I specifying a prefix when all I'm doing is adding schematics? Well, the reason why you have to give it a prefix is when you install xplat by default, they kind of stub out some like demo components just to kind of get you started on the right path. And they're going to want the prefix so that way they can prefix those components appropriately. Next, we're going to also have a flag for the platforms. So this is the platforms that we're going to intend on developing for today. So one of the big questions when I talk about xplat is people are like, hold on, well, like I'm just developing a web app. I don't really need xplat now, do I? And the answer is generally, probably not. But if you think in the future that you're going to be developing multi-platform applications, you can start with xplat today and just develop your web application, maybe your Nest backend in a monorepo, and then eventually you can start adding in whether that's NativeScript or Ionic or Electron. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and add in the platforms flag, and we're going to say we want to develop for the web, so that's obviously Angular. We're going to be doing NativeScript and Ionic, and we're also going to be doing a Nest backend. So before we get into the code, one of the things that we need to understand about NativeScript is truly built on top of NX. How many people here are familiar with NX? Anybody using it today? We got a couple people? All right, great. So if you're used to developing applications with NX, you're used to this apps folder, right? That's in the root of your project, and this libs directory. And the libs directory is where we're going to put all of our code that we're going to share between all of our applications, right? And so what xplat really does, and it's kind of the core of xplat, is it basically slides in this middle tier, right? So at the bottom, we still have our libs, and this is where all of our libraries are going to live, and this is our shared code. And this code is what we kind of want to think about as being platform agnostic, right? So think about, when you think about platform agnostic, you're thinking about like core services, right? Like logging, or maybe a Windows service or something like that, right? So this is something that doesn't matter if I'm on the web or if I'm on a NativeScript or an Ionic application, right? Next, we have xplat. xplat is where we're going to put all of our code that we're going to share for a particular platform. So let's say I'm developing a web platform, right? I'm going to put all of my features in there, my components in there, and all my utilities that are web-based in there. I'm also going to have, inside of xplat, I'm also going to have directories for NativeScript or Ionic or whatever else you're doing. And the structure here is, I mean, you've probably seen this, is familiar with like, you know, Jesse talked about testing, and you see this with like unit testing versus like end-to-end and all that kind of stuff. But the same idea kind of follows in that the bulk of your code should live in the libs, right? So that way we can use it across all of our applications. And that's that business logic again, you know, that could be services that's enforcing particular things that your company does. So we want to have most of our code there, and then the next up is our platform code. That's going to be in the xplat directory. And then the top tier is our implementation, and that's in our apps directory, and that's where each application is going to live. All right, cool. Let's catch a unicorn. Let me get out of my presentation here. All right. So what I've done, I did this ahead of time, and hopefully the Wi-Fi is not too bad here, because we're going to, oh yeah. Sure. Let me zoom this up for you. Thank you. Is that good? I'm going to probably this one too, eh? So I have already run the first command. So if we go back to our slides, first command is to create that MX workspace. Right? So I already did that, so that way we don't have to just watch npm install run. So I've already done that. And what we have here is just a simple NX workspace. So we haven't even installed or done anything with xplat. So let's go ahead and get xplat installed. And we're going to see how fast the Wi-Fi is. While that's running, we can also talk to it. Hopefully it's fast. Yeah. Excellent. So that generated a bunch of code for us. And I'm going to go ahead and kick this off because this one takes the longest. So I'm actually going to use the Angular console. If you don't know all the commands, one of the things that's really nice about the Angular console is that it's very discoverable to see what schematics you can use and what commands there are that are available. Can I bump this up? No. Can you guys kind of see that? It's okay? Yeah, sorry. So if we come down here, now I can see that I have the NStudio schematics commands available. And by default, when I go to generate an application, that's going to be a web application. So let's just go ahead and we're going to generate out our application, and we're going to call it Unicorn. There's a bunch of different options that you would expect, just like if you generate out an Angular application inside of the console here. So let's just go ahead and generate that out. And while it's doing that, I'm going to let that kind of run. Now let's go back and take a look at our libs directory. So one thing I like about xplat as well is it kind of comes out of the box with a couple of nice features. And one of the things that it comes with beyond that next is it sets up a core module for you. And inside that core module, we've got a base component. And you may be familiar with this kind of similar structure if maybe you're using this at your organization, where you might have a base component and all your components extend. And this makes it really easy to deal with variables and unsubscribing, perhaps using something like the RxJS take until operator. So this is nice, this comes out of the box with us, and this is ready to go. We can also go down into our services. Again, this is this platform agnostic code, right? So these are the services that I talked about previously, like logging and the Windows service. So it comes with a nice logging service that's ready to go for you, and also a Windows service that's platform agnostic, and we can use injection tokens in order to determine which Windows service we're going to use. If we're on a web, obviously we can just reference the window global. If we're going to maybe determine, use a location or open a confirmation or whatever we're going to do. Or if we're on native script, we can switch over and use the native script implementation of that. We also have our models. We're going to share that across all of our applications. And let's go ahead and look at xplat. And we can see that within xplat, because I told it these are the platforms that I want to generate for, we've got 3 different directories. So we've got Ionic, native script, and web. And within each of those, I've got a core module as well, along with that same application base component that extends our library base component. And then I have all of my features. And this is where you're actually going to build out your application, right? This is where you're going to build your feature set. And then once you have the features here, then you're going to implement them into the specific application where you need them. We also can share styling between all of our applications because it's just Angular. So we have styling at each level. So actually if I go back up to libs, you can see here that we've got root styling. You're probably not going to have styling in here, especially for like native script and stuff, but you might have CSS variables in here that you can reference or Sass variables. And then we can actually implement those in each of our xplat directories. Okay, and if we come up here, now we should see, here's our web application that we just generated. And inside here is just a standard web application. And we can start that up. Actually, let me come back and let's generate out a native script app. So we'll call this one Pegasus. Cool, and what that is going to do is that's going to create a native script application for us, and that's also going to be inside the apps directory. And all of this is all set up for you with xplat, so that way when you're using and you're generating out components and features inside of here, everything knows about everything else, kind of, right? Because these are just schematics. And so when we build out feature sets inside of here, it's going to extend the features that we have inside that xplat/native script directory. So let's take a look at maybe generating out a component. Now that that's done, all right, let's give it a name. We'll just call this like a login component. And you'll see here, and I know it's kind of hard to read, I'm sorry, but basically we can't just generate out a component in xplat without telling it which platforms we actually want to generate that component for. Because maybe we just want a login component in a particular platform. Maybe it's like an admin portal that's a web platform or something like that. So we have to come down here to platforms. And unfortunately, this isn't like a drop down or multi-select at this time. So you're going to comma separate these. So we're going to do web and native script. All right, and now we go ahead. If you can see here, I wish I could bump this up, sorry. Actually, maybe I can just copy this. You can see what it looks like. So what you're going to notice is when we actually build out a component using xplat, we're going to build that component, and we're going to actually build it in the xplat directory, right? So it's actually not going to drop it in any of our apps unless we need to. So in this instance, we're going to build out a login component, and it's going to build that login component in our web and our native script, just like we told it to. And then it's also going to modify our each of our Vero files for us. So we generate that out. And then we'll come down here into our xplat directory. And now if we go into features, UI, components, right there's our login component. And we can see that it's already wired up and everything's ready to go. So that way to extend that base component that we saw earlier, right? So what's really nice about xplat is as long as you're working inside the schematic and you're kind of following all the methodologies, if you will, of xplat, everything just kind of works together really nicely. I'm running out of time here, but I did want to show you, just as a quick demo, so if I just generate out an app, so in this instance on the left, this is an Android app running in an emulator, and then on your right is an iOS app running in the simulator, right, on Xcode. So very easy to get started with building out multi-platform applications, just kind of comes out of the box. One of the things that's also nice about xplat is it works with all the latest versions. So in this instance, this is Ionic 4. So this is running with Capacitor and the latest version of Ionic, which is really great. And so that's, I think I'm about out of time, Leo, huh? Did I go over? A little bit? Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, the next one is going to be